Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the Japan and South Korea Market Update webinar. It's great to see so many of you online with us. I'm Sarah Roberts, the Regional Manager for Asia Pacific with Wine Australia, and I'll be your host for today's update. Along with our colleagues from Austrade, we're going to provide an update on the economic environment in each country, do a deep dive into the wine market and current reality of doing business, look at challenges and opportunities for Australian wine exporters, as well as taking a closer look at some of the marketing activities we'll be undertaking. But before we begin, let's acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land.
We acknowledge the lands of the traditional custodians across Australia. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' continuing connection to land, water and sky country. We acknowledge the wine regions and hundreds of different nations around this continent and the ancient soils on which we stand and grow. From the Wadani salt bush peoples of Margaret River in our west to the East Coast Sunrise people of the Yuin Nation and the Southern Island and Saltbush peoples of the Nioni peoples of Tasmania. Today and always, we pay our deep respects to the custodians, those who went before and those who will follow, as the knowledge holders of tomorrow. This is Australia.
I'd like to acknowledge that whilst we are presenting from lands around the globe today, I'm coming to you from the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. Before we get into the content for today, I'll just take you through some housekeeping. So at the right of your screen, you will find a chat and Q&A function. To join the conversation or ask a question, you can just post directly into the chat. As I mentioned, we have our colleagues from Austrade in both Japan and South Korea, as well as our country managers, Rose McDonald and Susie Chung, who will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible, time permitting. Any questions that we can't answer today, we'll follow up after the session. This webinar will also be recorded and links sent to all attendees after the session. Lastly, if you're having any technical issues, we recommend that you just refresh your URL or pop a question in the chat and we'll see if we can help. So let's begin. We'll start today with the South Korean market. And so I'd like to introduce Dane Richmond, Trade and Investment Commissioner with Austrade Seoul, who will give an update from on the ground. Over to you, Dane.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning. This is my first presentation with Wine Australia, so very pleased to be talking to you today from what is a very nice spring morning here in Seoul, South Korea. Just a quick disclaimer there. I just thought I'd give a quick snapshot of our team. My direct manager is Julie Quinn. Probably of most interest is Ellen Lee, who sits there in pod 3. Is my team leader for food, beverage, and is our wine lead. So thanks to Ellen for all the hard work she's doing here in Korea for Australian wine. We've also got our state representatives from South Australia and New South Wales embedded with us here at the embassy here in Seoul. So I'd just like to acknowledge Myung-Jin Kim from the South Australia, Sana Kim from New South Wales, and Eugene Kim from New South Wales as well. We're a Team Australia approach here, so I'm very glad that we have Susie Chung on the call today from Wine Australia as well. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without Susie, so we're very thankful for Susie's expertise and wisdom that she shares here in the Korea market. Australia and South Korea share a strong bilateral relationship, and that's underpinned by trade, shared strategic interests, and strong people-to-people links. South Korea is Australia's 4th largest trading partner and 3rd largest export market. This slide here before you shows Korea's import and export partners, and you can see that Australia is ranked 6th in terms of import partners and 16th in terms of export partners. You'll be able to see that here. South Korea is now the world's 13th largest economy, and we sit right there in terms of GDP. South Korea and Australia are quite comparable at 1.6 trillion US dollars, so we're in the top 14 economies in the world. Two-way goods trade in 2022 was about $150,000 a minute. Interestingly, that we measure that in minutes. Australia's goods exports to the Republic of Korea in 2022 were almost $100,000 per minute. Australia's goods exports from the Republic of Korea in 2022 were about over $50,000 a minute. So we suggest referring to our bilateral goods trade as 150, 100, and 50. The Republic of Korea was Australia's third largest goods trading partner in 2022, rising from fourth place. So they overtook the US, and the Republic of Korea retained its position as Australia's third largest goods export market in 2022. The Republic of Korea overtook Japan to become Australia's third largest source of goods imports in 2022. And so now the Korea's ranking is easy to remember insofar as the goods trade is concerned. We call it 333. While most of this exceptional performance can be attributed to high coal, oil, and gas prices, we do see quite a diverse range of products, goods, and services now flowing between the two countries, and that's really good to see, particularly as we move into our energy transition. We're very excited to partner with South Korea as we all steam towards low carbon economies. The Korea-Australia Free Trade Agreement, easier to say it as CAFTA, supports one of the strongest and most complementary economic relationships that we have in the Asia-Pacific region. The agreement protects and enhances the competitive position of Australian businesses in South Korea. Australian goods exporters gain significant improved market access with their goods, with tariff elimination on all of Australia's current exports by value due for full implementation of the agreement. Under CAFTA, Australian service providers receive the best treatment Korea has agreed to with any trade partner, which is great to see. Korea is Australia's fourth largest agriculture export market, valued at $4.5 billion in the 2022-2023 financial year, and this accounts for 6.89% of Australia's total agriculture exports, with a 2.95% increase on the previous year. As someone who grew up in an agricultural area, I can tell you that's a game changer, and I don't need to tell you, it's a game changer for those of us who grow up in agricultural regions across Australia. The key export categories that benefited by CAFTA include beef, dairy, sugar, cotton, seasonal fruits, and bottled wine. There are challenges, however. Korea has the world's lowest, OECD's lowest birth rate, and so we're really starting to see that the aging population bite here. A somewhat inflexible labour market, so there's a wide gap in terms of benefits between permanent and temporary workers. Broadly speaking, a permanent worker is someone who receives the full benefits afforded to them by Korean labour laws, and a temporary worker is someone who does not. So for permanent workers, corporations must provide things like health insurance, occupational hazard insurance, unemployment insurance, and the national pension. And permanent workers here have a minimum guaranteed paid personal days, including maternity leave and severance packages. The wage gap between men and women and the income disparity between the top and bottom wage earners in this country among the widest in the OECD. Korea is heavily dependent on exports. It's an export economy. In 2015, about 46% of Korea's GDP was due to export of goods and services, and that means about half of the Korea's entire economy relies on exports. By comparison, only 13, 18, and 22% of US, Japanese, and Chinese economies depend on exports respectively. South Korea over the past 4 decades has demonstrated incredible growth and global integration to become a high-tech industrialized economy, and you can see that when you travel to South Korea everywhere. In the 1960s, GDP per capita was comparable with levels in the poorer countries among Africa and Asia. In 2004, Korea joined the $1 trillion club of world economies and is currently the world's 12th largest economy. So the speed and pace of change here is incredible. And that's really sort of reflected now in the choices that consumers make, and we'll speak about consumers in a bit. The government has promoted the import of raw materials and technology at the expense of consumer goods and encouraged savings and investment over consumption. The 1997-98 Asia financial crisis exposed latent weaknesses in South Korea's development model, including high debt to equity ratios and massive short-term foreign borrowing, GDP plunged by 6.9% in 1998 and then recovered by 9% in 1999 and 2000. Korea subsequently adopted numerous economic reforms following the crisis, including greater openness to foreign investment and imports. Growth moderated to about 4% annually between 2003 and 2007. South Korea's export-focused economy was hit hard by the 2008 global economic downturn, but quickly rebounded to reach 6.3% growth in 2010. The US-Korea Free Trade Agreement was ratified by both governments in 2011 and went into effect in March of 2012. Throughout 2012 and 2013, the economy experienced sluggish growth because of market slowdowns in the US, China, and the Eurozone. The administration in 2014 faced challenges in balancing heavy reliance on exports with developing domestic-oriented sectors such as services. And so we've really seen this evolution over time of Korea's economy transitioning from a major export market into sort of more services and high tech. Demographics in Korea are something that we constantly talk about here. The percentage of single households now is the largest in the world, and that's having an impact on retail behavior, retail markets, food, household expenditure, and housing manufacturing businesses. Single member families are expected to reach about 40% of the total households by 2050. Nearly 4 out of 10 of South Korean families will be single member households in 2050 due to rapidly aging population, sharp declines in marriages. In a report based on Statistics Korea's demographics data, the Korean Land and Geospatial Informatics Corps said that 35% of the country's households will be led by single members in 2050. They project that the South Korean population will plunge to 47.63 million in 2050 after reaching a peak of 52.21 million in 2030. During the same period, the number of single and two-member households are forecast to fall to 20.09 million from 22.34 million. In 2050, the number of houses will continue to rise to 29.98 million in 2050 as couples give birth to fewer babies and younger adults opt not to marry because of economic challenges that they face. Consumer trends, the most interesting part of today's talk. Seoul National University issues a regular consumer trend report each year. The consumer report summarizes the projections for 2024. So we have an emphasis on the value of time down to minutes and seconds, and I definitely see that here. People are now really starting to calculate the value of their time. They focus, I think that a lot of this is driven by what's called the reduction in attention span of millennial consumers. Technically, I'm a very old millennial. I think I just made it in, and I can sympathize. The focus on experiential purchases as much as traditional tangible products. And I think for wine, that's quite an interesting, wine kind of, I think, bridges the gap between experience and a tangible product. It's a tangible product that creates an experience. And so we really sort of, in terms of speaking to consumers and distributors here, really focus on the story that wine tells and the Australian story that wine can tell to consumers here, and it can be quite appealing. Businesses are trying to attract consumers to stay in their space for longer, be that a digital space or a physical space. The longer you can hold someone's attention and their presence, the better you will be in terms of your interface with them. Increased emphasis on human creativity in the face of AI. So AI is a major topic here. The idea of understanding individual needs and feelings and offering human interaction over AI services is a very unique offering. Renewed aspiration to be a Renaissance person. So really sort of looking at academic achievements, the whole sort of totality of what a person is, their wealth, their occupation, their heritage, their personality, their tastes. This is driving old money trends in fashion. The pursuit of an appropriate price point rather than the lowest price point, I think, is really important. People basically want value for money. They're not above spending money to get what they want, but they don't just spend money for no reason. They really want an appropriate price point. Pursuit of dopamine generating activities is an interesting one. People are looking for happiness, so they're more accustomed to short forms, reels on social media, for example, instant gratification and continuously looking for the next thing. Something we call ditto consumption here, which is really influencer-led consumption. So if they see someone influential consuming something, ditto, I'll do the same. So there's a lot of follow consumption here. Prevalence of spin-off projects, so individual consumers and larger corporations using spin-offs to transfer risks. And I've seen that in the wine industry with sort of traditional wines being used in different and innovative ways. And so that's something that I think is something to consider for the South Korean market. Work-life balance is a word that I'm hearing more here, especially now as a manager. Something that I'm really driving hard with my team is to ensure that we're working productively, but also healthily. The emergence of the care economy, so with an aging population, older and younger members of the community participating in the care economy is something that's quite new here and will need to continue as the demographics change here. The growing grocery purchasing power of men in their 40s. As a man in his 40s, I know that Korean men are also taking up more caring responsibilities and domestic duties, which is good to see. Traditional e-commerce and TV home shopping ads used to target predominantly female audiences here in South Korea, but that's changing. The three major imported liquors, wine, beer, and whiskey, accounting for about 70% of the total imported alcohol market. Whiskey used to be the largest share in 2010, and beer was the largest share between 2017 and 2019. Wine was small in the overall alcohol beverage market until 2019 and has now become dominant. The overall market, however, is shrinking following 2023. And so we're seeing a bit of a contraction in the market here in South Korea for wine. Sorry. And as you can see, sorry, I forgot to remove my slides. As you can see, wine was really dominant into 2019 and then has tapered off a bit. Whiskey and beer have remained slightly more stable, albeit at a lower level. So total trade volume for imported wine has declined since 2023 after significant growth across the pandemic in 2020 and 2022. Some of the reasons for that is they overstocked. So during the peak time, 30% more wines came through to Korea in response to rising demand. More consumers are opting to spend disposable income on travel now that they can travel again. The economic downturn is driving consumers to reduce spending on small luxuries. And we are seeing a rebound of whiskey, but it's not substantial at this stage. Nevertheless, the wine market here is maturing with more regular wine drinkers and a higher average spend per bottle. So people are drinking less, but drinking more premium wines. The consumer trend of what we call the MZ generation is changing all the time, while the 40s and 50s have a strong and solid purchasing power for wine. So Australia continues to be the 6th largest supplier of imported wines in Korea by both value and volume. Australia ranks 6th for varietals, so red and sparkling, and ranks 7th for white. Sparkling red, actually, if anyone makes sparkling red, that's an interesting story here. Ellen and myself are trying to introduce it here. My wife's quite a fan, I'm a fan. So we'll see how that goes. The market is maturing with more regular wine drinkers and a high average spend per bottle, as you mentioned. We're observing greater market segmentation. It will be important for Australian wine exporters to partner with their Korean partners to develop effective on-trend marketing strategies that target younger female and MZ generation consumers in the wine market for longer-term growth prospects. So really looking at what does the future of this market look like. Significant decline in entry-level wines, hitting hard on Chilean wineries. Premium lines between $30 and $50 has a better prospect than entry-level offerings for Australian exporters. Super premium wine and luxury wine, mostly French Champagne, Grand Cru, and Bourgogne based wines. Demand for natural and organic wine is decreasing due to the inconsistent quality and unusual tasting profile compared to general products. Red wine consumption continues to make up the largest proportion of Korea's wine market, but Koreans are starting to consume more white varieties, as well as that pair well with Korea's spicy and or seafood-based dishes. So really figuring out how to pair Australian wine with Korean food is a very interesting project that people are undertaking. According to the Wine Intelligence Report in 2022, Korean consumers are spending an average of 41,000 to 54,000 Korean won per bottle. So yeah, between 40 and 50 or $60 price points. Online orders and in-person pickup systems are becoming more popular methods to purchase wine. We've observed here at Austrade Sol that Australian wines in their offer products within a premium range, so about between 30 and 40,000 Korean won. Sparkling wines and lighter tasting profiles across both red and wine varieties tend to do well in the market. This is consistent with market trends reported in the Korean Wine Media and Wine Intelligence Report in 2022. Online sales for all alcoholic products are still prohibited in Korea, with some notable exceptions. Being more traditional alcoholic drinks. Consumers can still purchase wines online and pick them up in person at designated stores. There's discussion between the tax office, the government and industry about online sales being allowed soon. So many importers and retailers have been actively developing online platforms, but at the moment, it's still not something that we can do here, but very much looking forward to that opportunity. I think that'll really help us as well with social media into sales. And so we're looking at the developments in that particular space as an innovation in the market that will be good to watch. The top 13 importers are listed before you. Top 6 are highlighted in red. They're the top players, we would say, that are in the wine industry at the moment. Many importers are owned by family-owned conglomerates called chaebol. The big ones that you might have heard of, Shinsegae, Vitis, which is owned by D&B, and Vinle de Mail Dairy owns a distributor. Lotte, Chilsung, and Hait Jinro are the Korea's largest beverage and alcohol manufacturers, but also import large wine brands from overseas. Those of you who have ever tried soju will be very familiar with Chilsung and Hait and Jinro's products. Distribution channels into Korea, we still see a lot through hypermarkets, grocery markets, department stores, and convenience stores. Interestingly, when I came to South Korea, I was surprised by the prevalence of wine purchased through convenience stores. Very strong here, particularly those at 7-Eleven, who we've done promotions with in the past that have been quite successful, but also GS, CU, and EMART. Korea's, I think, has more convenience stores per person per square mile than anywhere in the world. So it's a very interesting distribution model for wine. Finding the right partners. Sorry, I'll just move to past the tax stuff. Finding right partners, undertaking due diligence. When it comes to Korea, partnership is everything, regardless of the sector that you're in. I work across many different sectors: resources, energy, hydrogen, infrastructure, and food and beverage and wine. And universally, finding the right partner, decision-making in Korea can be quite hierarchical. And that's a function of the culture here, but also of the corporate structures that the conglomerates are made up of. So pursuing relationships with patients, it can be, being a neo-Confucian society, it can be quite difficult for Australians to feel like they've made a successful first or second visit. But generally, once you start to build a relationship, you can get quite close with your partners, and that becomes a sort of very important relationship that will see you through your time here. I know that it is difficult. Some of the importers are very large and import lots and lots of different wines from all around the world. And so getting attention is something that requires a lot of investment of your time and energy and resources. But we're here to help. Korea's legal system is developing, continues to develop quite quickly. As I said, if you wouldn't do it in Australia, don't do it here, but definitely educate yourself, seek appropriate legal advice. Austrade here in Seoul, we're always a good sounding board. So if you're in the market, please do let us know and come and visit us. And as I said, the keys to success, pretty universal. You might have seen these, regardless of the market that you're going to. Finding the right partners, doing your due diligence, taking your time, building relationships, revising your price and really considering your offering in the market. So do your market research, and then leveraging not just Austrade's networks and expertise, but definitely the Wine Australia, Team Australia, state and territory governments. They're all here and all here to assist. So with that, I think I'll stop. I believe I'm on time. I haven't gone too much over time. If I have, I apologize. You can let me know in the comments if I've spoken too long.
Thanks, Dane. No, all very valuable information. So I think take the time you need for that one. Yeah, lots to think about relative to the Korean market there. I think particularly interesting the consumer trends and thinking about those relative to marketing wine. Yeah, lots of food for thought. Next, I would like to pass over to Susie Chung, who is our country manager for Wine Australia based in Seoul, for her thoughts and comments. Over to you, Susie.
Hello, I'm Susie Chung, country manager for Wine Australia in Korea. I would like to talk about market analysis, trend, challenges, and recommendations. The population of Korea is decreasing, but fortunately, the proportion of adults over 20 years old who are eligible for consuming alcoholic beverage is increasing. Currently, Korean consumes 84 liters of alcoholic beverage per capita annually. The overall imported liquor market in Korea, which enjoyed prosperity for 2 consecutive years in 2021 and 2022, is declining, with the wine leading the decrease. Wine accounts for about 8% of the liquor market. Wine still maintains a considerable scale, and its position is crucial. Wine has now undergone some level of popularization, and one concerning aspect is that there was a significant number of wines being discontinued. As the wine market stagnates, imports of all wine categories have declined. Particularly, sales of wines priced below 20,000 won have decreased. Chile has long maintained dominance in this market segment. Currently, sales of Chilean wines priced below 20,000 won have halved, and sales of mid-range wines have also decreased by about 40%. Importers and retailers are now starting to focus more on Burgundy and Champagne, as well as other premium wines. The reasons are manifold. The economic situation is unfavorable, and meanwhile, the affluent class is concentrating their spending on overseas travel. Another contributing factor is the growth of whiskey market, and also MZ generation males are no longer enjoying wines as much. However, overall, the preferences for red wine among young generations remain consistent. Currently, in terms of value, France, Italy, and the United States collectively occupy 71.6% of market share, and an increase of nearly 10% compared to 2022. Surprisingly, the market size of premium wines accounts for 31.6% of the total wine market. Despite the market contraction in 2023, it still demonstrated robust growth. Australia ranks 6th both in terms of volume and value in the wine market. The underperformance of Australian wine in Korea can be attributed to several factors. Firstly, contraction of wine market in Korea. Secondly, ambiguous pricing. Thirdly, limited premium brand differentiation. So now let's return to the discussion of Korean wine market. Market size in 2024 is expected to decrease by more than 10%. Efforts will focus on reducing inventory, due to low sales of Lunar New Year gift sets in January. Therefore, a substantial rebound estimated in the fourth quarter under the assumption of improved external economic indicators. However, there are still growth opportunities, particularly in premium wines and white wine, sparkling wines. Moreover, consumers without any bias and the younger generation remain attractive targets. Providing them with unique and appropriate experiences and curation to enjoy with wine would be very beneficial. For example, the major wine importers are setting up wine complex cultural spaces or redesigning restaurants and shopping shops to be more attractive. Ayong FBC has already succeeded with Staff and MOA, which serves as both restaurants and shopping shops, while Lotte recently opened a restaurant. Narasela has launched 10-story building, a complex facility called Dawn, hosting various events. Therefore, the key lies in combining curation and education to promote wine. Where are the opportunities that suit Australian wineries? Australian wineries should target premium markets to avoid intense competition in low-priced segments. Following the strategies of prestigious wines region like Napa Valley to establish a strong brand image through scarcity and premium quality. Adapting to change consumer taste, especially in markets preference are shifting towards white wine, present an opportunity. Australian wineries can cater to this trend by offering white wines with label designs that catches the eyes at a similar or slightly lower price range than New Zealand white wine. However, caution is advised regarding pronounced oak flavor, except for premium wine. Australian white wines with the subtle fruit aroma and balanced acidity can be successful in this market. Furthermore, with a growing demand for Pinot Noir and alternatives to expensive options like Burgundy wine, Australian wineries can provide reasonably priced alternatives to meet consumers' preferences. Additionally, rising popularity of sparkling wines like Cava and Prosecco due to affordability presents a market worth targeting. By prioritizing open-minded consumer and industry professional and considering Korea as a test market, Australian wineries can explore opportunities in premium and super premium segments. Korean consumers value close relationship and loyalty, making frequent brand events crucial for Australian wineries. Compared to other countries, Australia has held fewer brand events in Korea, missing out on opportunity to engage with consumer and influencers. Increasing brand days in Korea can significantly boost social media exposure and importer interest, as demonstrated by success of Wins Coonawarra events. Many importers prioritize other reasons due to time constraints, but Australian wineries should prioritize Korea for growth. Korean wine enthusiasts seek detailed information beyond the typical winery stories, which we can find on their website, preferring precise data on soil, altitude, winemaking techniques, providing detailed content in Korean, including tasting notes and food pairing directly from winemakers, can create a luxurious experience and foster long-term customer loyalty. I've been consistently writing articles highlighting the 65 geographical indications in Australia, receiving positive feedback from sales representatives and importers. Complementing these articles, I've actively engaged in wine education sessions whenever possible, recognizing that education is potent marketing strategy in Korea. Recently, I had an opportunity, Australian Wine Now 2024 event review, where 236 participants and 30 SKUs were showcased. The event was not only well received, but also featured in a leading economic newspaper, and showcasing keen interest Koreans have learning about Australian wine. Participants actively engage illustration work, rediscovering richness of Australian wine diversity and versatility. Looking ahead, I'm preparing for upcoming Australian wine picnic event in May, leveraging the current enthusiasm to enjoy Australian wines with 50 to 60 SKUs highlighted. Furthermore, there is a survey underway in September to gauge interest in the grand tasting. Your response to EOI would be greatly appreciated. Since starting this endeavor in July 22, the presence of Australian wine on Korean social media platform has noticeably increased. Word of mouth among wine enthusiasts about premium Australian wines is gaining traction, indicating promising prospects despite current challenges. I reminded a quote by Korean philosopher Jeong Ya-kyung about recovery, emphasizing the resilience and optimism needed during challenging times. I believe better days are ahead for the Australian wine industry, and I'm committed to contributing to its continued success. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Susie. Some really, really useful information there for wine exporters, those who are already in Korea, I think, and lots of tips to help support importers through, what you've sort of said is a bit of a challenging time at the moment. So I think, again, lots of food for thought, and lots that exporters can take on and help their importers through this time. We have some time for questions now. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat panel on the right-hand side of the screen. We have none yet. You and Dane have both done obviously a very thorough job, so there's no questions. But if you do think of anything you would like to ask Susie, please put them in the chat. We can come back to Korea later if anyone has anything. Otherwise, I think we might move forward and onto the Japan market. So I will now introduce Murray Spence, who is the Trade and Investment Commissioner with Austrade Tokyo, to give an update from the ground in Japan. Over to you, Murray.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and good morning, everyone, from a beautiful Tokyo with bright sunshine, and the cherry blossoms are out in full bloom, so it's a lovely time to be in Japan. Enjoy yourself in Australia. I'm going to cover at some speed this morning the following four areas, just to give you a very brief general market overview, then go into a little bit of detail on Japan's wine market, mention the opportunities, and then mention also some of the opportunities or the projects that Austrade is delivering in the next 6 to 12 months. So starting with the key points on the market, as we've heard already, Japan has slipped to the world's fourth largest economy with an annual GDP of $4.4 trillion in 2023. It does, however, of course, being number four, remain a strong and major trading nation and one of the largest investors in the world. Japan is a democracy with the Prime Minister as the head of government, but it still retains a patriarchal monarchy with the emperor as head of state. Politically, it's a very stable country. The population, similar to Korea, is diminishing, but it's still 5 times that of Australia at 122.6 million this year. It's been declining for some 10 years now and is characterized by a low birth rate and a large silver demographic. 29% of the population is aged over 65 and 10% of the population is over 80. In 2020, 38% of households consisted of a single member, and this is projected to reach 40% by 2040, even though the population will also be declining during that time. One of the interesting things about Japan for Australia, of course, is its low food self-sufficiency rate. It's one of the lowest in the world economies, major world economies, at just 38%. And that means, of course, that it imports over 60% of its food. So great opportunities for us there. The Japan-Australia partnership is our closest and the most mature in Asia. It's fundamentally important to both countries' strategic and economic interests. Japan is Australia's second largest trading partner and second largest export market and fourth largest source of foreign direct investment. JPA, the Japan-Australia Economic Partnership Agreement, was entered into force in 2015 and is now fully implemented. It supported a rise in two-way trade of some 31%. However, with regard to wine, the advantages that JPA provided by reducing tariffs are now fully negated by the other FTAs and EPAs, or economic partnership agreements, that Japan has entered into with other countries. So really we're on a level playing field now, and it's value for money perception. Like many trading nations, the Japanese economy is being stimulated by a range of external global factors, and I've listed them here on the left, the most predominant of which is increased production and ingredient prices. This has driven the cost of imported and domestic products higher, with some 30,000 food products increasing in price between 6 and 16% in 2023. The yen has lost 30% in the last 4 years. So this has compounded the effect of the price increases overseas, but of course it's boosted exports from Japan. Just generally speaking, inbound tourists are back with a vengeance, and numbers have eclipsed already pre-COVID numbers, which is putting a pressure on the service sector because of the labour shortages we are experiencing here, and it's driving up wages and also fueling an influx of international workers, which is great. So it's a very complex and increasingly dynamic economic situation here. General sales of alcohol in Japan, I'm sorry, the data is from 2022, but we don't have one true source of information here. We have to pull data from where we can get it. So I will bring your attention to the data. You can see that sales of alcoholic drinks increased 2% in 2022 over 2021. Beer is the most commonly consumed category, but combined liquors are the largest collective category. Wine is only 4% share of total alcohol sales, but you can see here it actually increased 6% in volume terms compared to 2021. And I think this was the result basically of going past the COVID pandemic and people returning to eating out. So obviously increase in food service. In the wine sector, sales increased 6% in 2022. And of this 373 million litres sold, 64%, as you can see here on the screen, was imported. Top producers remain France, Chile and Italy. Australia's market share is still around 4%. Much more data there on the screen, but some of the trends we are seeing are a continued polarisation in the market. So increasing sales of lower price point products through discount and convenience stores, while premium wines are being purchased from department stores and wine stores. We've seen a decrease in shelf space of Chilean wines, with an increase in brands from the EU, USA, and even a little bit of Australia, as stores aim to increase sales revenue. There's been a decrease in the frequency of luxury purchases, including wine, but an increase in what consumers are willing to pay. And also due to the weak yen and inflation, we're finding that importers at the moment are waiting to add new brands to their wine portfolio. Here are the combined sales of still wine from 11 countries in 2022. Note that about 70% of purchases are made around the $16.60 price point per bottle. Due to inflation, consumers are paying more for wine, but on fewer occasions, a trend that continues as obviously wine prices continue to increase. Also of note, while on-premise sales rebounded 37% post-COVID, almost half of the wines are still sold in supermarkets and liquor shops. Sales at discount shops increased 31% in 2022. Due to inflation, we've seen that consumers prefer to shop around a little bit for what they're looking for, just to ensure that they're buying the same product but at the lowest possible price. Here is the import data of still wine in 2023, and this is taken from the Japan Customs Trade statistics. The total import volume was 146 million litres, an 11% decrease compared to 2022. In terms of quantity, however, you can see Chile tops the list, followed by France and Italy. Only Spain was able to maintain its level. All others decreased, including Australia. Here, regarding total sales of imported sparkling wine in 2022, there's a notable polarization. This is a very interesting slide for me. 60% of purchases are under $22.20 per bottle, but still approximately 30% are more than $55 a bottle. So there's real separation. With regard to channel, there's been an increase in sales through general liquor stores, which are offering greater range of price points to accommodate both home consumption and BYO purchases. This slide shows the total imported sparkling wine in 2023 from Japan Customs again. Total import volume was 39.8 million litres, a decrease of 10% over 2022. Again, France was the lead, followed by Spain and Italy, with Australia in fourth at 1.2 million litres to a value of 10.3 million. So that's still quite substantial. So distribution channels into Japan are clear and very easy to understand, despite what's in front of you. Whole products typically flow to market through an importer and then on to a wholesaler, and then us on-sold to resellers or direct to a retail or on-premise business. Wholesalers remain very important in the supply chain, as retail stores and restaurants have relatively limited space to store stock, so they prefer to just purchase small orders. A trend that emerged from the pandemic is an increase in B2C sales. During the pandemic, of course, many brick and mortar organizations that had neglected e-commerce opened online stores, and this includes both importers and wholesalers. This makes sense, of course, given that they have logistics in place to store and dispatch stock, but it was quite surprising, as traditionally each party in the supply chain values and respects the relationship they have with their partners. Interestingly enough, though, of course, post-pandemic, these e-commerce platforms, B2C, still remain in place and are still operating. The buyer for Australian wineries, for Australian wines, at most time is the Japanese importer, of which we expect or anticipate there are approximately 250. So most importers are SMEs. We estimate that at least half of the wine importers have an Australian wine in their portfolio, and unfortunately, most of them think that one brand is sufficient. We think of the 250 importers, a little over 50 have more than 3 Australian wine brands from different wine regions, and only about 10 importers have several Australian wine brands and understand the strength of each of the regions. So there's definitely still work for us to do on educating the local importers here. According to the Analysis of Wines, which is an industry-leading magazine, and sorry, it's not wines, it's WANS. WANS is Wine and Spirits, an abbreviation of that. Total sales of Australian wine has decreased 5%. 81% of Australian wines was sold at less than $16.60. And another interesting point is, although the share is less than 1% of total Australian wines, sales of wines in the $55 to $110 category more than doubled in 2022. So we're seeing that top end grow quite nicely. From a volume and growth perspective, however, a retail price of between $11 to $33 remains a sweet spot for both Australia's supply capacity and capability and demand from the market. So we are sort of in that medium price point. We do say wherever we go that interesting Australian wines start from about $30. So that's our key message, and it's considered better value for money, especially compared to other major wine producing countries, particularly France and the US. This analysis is also from WANS. Most of the major Australian wines are sold at supermarkets. In general, most of the major supermarkets sell 2 to 3 wine brands. Australian categories have not changed much in these locations. We have Yellowtail, Jacobs Creek, Wyndham Estate, and Di Bortoli. There has been an increase in sales at department stores, and that's a positive indication of increasing interest in premium Australian wines. So when it comes to opportunities in the market, we are always fielding inquiries for entry price point wines. Unrealistically, often the request is FOB prices from around $3.50 to $4 per bottle. We're having to change that estimate and manage expectations very quickly in that respect. We observe there are numerous promotions to promote award-winning wines as well. Any wine that has a gold medal on it sells very well here. Among young sommelier, the interest in natural wines is endless. For this category, more important than the country of origin is actually the winery philosophy. So that's interesting if you are looking at producing those wines, or you are doing that. Organic wines are a bit tricky due to incoming requirements, but the interest is still there. Importers may be slower and more careful to add organically certified brands. For the health conscious, we have non-alcohol and low alcohol wine demand continues to be strong, particularly around in the young female demographic particularly. And there's also interest too, because of the number of single households or single person households, for small sized wines. It's not only wine, it's also beer and other RTGs and spirits here you can get in very small servings. So that's potential here. Also of interest on this slide, I draw your attention to some regulatory changes that every supplier should be aware of. The first one is a change in or the use of labeling, what you can claim on your product. So the European Union GI is strictly protected in Japan due to the Japan-EU Economic Partnership Agreement. So currently there are 169 EU GIs for alcoholic beverages that are protected, and this number is increasing. So from February 1st, 2024, for example, Australian branded Prosecco or port cannot be sold in Japan unless the wine name is changed. And there's nothing we can do about this. This is because, of course, the agreement is between Japan and the EU and doesn't relate at all to any agreement that Australia has with Japan. So really you need to get across this very quickly and look at how your wine is being branded if you're intending to send it to Japan. A second thing is organic certified wines. So this is a little bit of advance notice for you, but from the 1st of October 2025, without JAS, which is Japan Accredited Standard, organic wines can't be sold as such. Until October next year, there's a transition period in place and Australian organic wines can be sold as they are. And there's some ongoing discussion happening right now as to how to handle Australian certified organic wines. Will that be recognised in Japan or not? So at the moment, there's two ways. This may change, but there's two ways to export and sell organic wines labelled as organic to Japan. Imported organic products can carry their organic JAS logos if they're produced or manufactured by overseas producers certified by the accredited Japanese certified bodies or accredited overseas certifying bodies. So this basically means you will have to apply from your winery or as your winery for accreditation under the Japanese system to produce wines, and then you would have no trouble bringing them into Japan. The other way to do it is imported organic wines can be relabeled with JAS logos by importers who are certified by the accredited Japanese certifying bodies. So relabeling with JAS logos is only possible when the imported organic products carry export certificates issued by the government agencies or quasi-government agencies in those countries. So you would have to get certification from Australia and provide that certification. So 2 areas there that you should become aware of if you are exporting these wines to Japan. Next slide. As a precursor to some cultural training, of course, to follow, I wanted to highlight the expectations Japanese partners will have of you and what this will mean for you in engaging with them. So on the left here, of course, we have working in Japan. It's still a very traditional society with regard to hierarchy and age being important. It's a relationship society. It's not a transactional one. Collective action and cross investment is expected. Your local partner will be thinking that they are working with you to build the business here. It's not just them trying to sell your wines in Japan. It's a collective relationship, a collective business. Face is always very important here, as is harmony and being polite and professional at all times. The winemaker, the winemaker or the export manager as a secondary option should visit the market, and the Japanese here still love a business card. So print one if you're coming, even though it may not be environmentally as appealing as it was. Back at the winery, this means for you lots of inspections, lots of attention to detail. Japan is all about delivering what you said you would deliver at the price you said you deliver it, in the form you said you deliver it, in the time you said you deliver it. It's all about consistency. So usually if you're involved with the Japanese importer, they will expect to have an exclusive arrangement with you. Now that may be written or not written, but they expect to be the exclusive distributor of your wine or a particular brand. They're very detail oriented, as I've mentioned. They will want very specific information to be supplied so that they can in turn respond to customers or to sommelier or just to help promote your product in Japan. They appreciate regular communication, especially if there's any change that's going to happen in delivery times or prices or whatever. They just like to be known. They don't appreciate surprises. And as I've mentioned already, the expectation is that you are committed to the market and to the importing partner. Okay, so decision-making in Japan does tend to be slow. As I mentioned, there'll be many questions. There'll be lots of procedures that need to be done, and you engaging proactively to build the brand, the business, and the relationship is a good way to ensure your success. Final slide for me is just an introduction of 2 projects that we do here. We're in the 3rd year now of our New to Market Wine project. Basically, this is a masked tasting to top sommelier initially, and then on to trade partners of brands that are wanting to enter the market. So recruitment for this, expressions of interest are basically received they're issued out in September, and then the process takes 3 months by the time we've got people, got the wine selected, got them tasted, got the results out. So actually next week here at the embassy, we have the first Tokyo blind tasting I think we have 45 representatives coming from importers. And then in May, we have the second iteration of that down in Osaka. So if you would like to be involved in that, please let us know and we can send out information to you when that becomes available. And you can see the second point down there, I've mentioned Osaka already. We have a professional trade tasting of 100 wines from up to 35 wineries. This is planned for May. So also it's an annual thing. So if you want to become involved in that, and noting also that here in Japan, we will have Osaka Expo next year. There will be increased activity down in Osaka. It could be a good time for you to consider becoming involved in that. So for both of those activities, I would encourage you to reach out. You can see here on the screen, I have the details of a very, very capable and very delightful business development manager handling beverages, Yoko Yamamura, who provided this slide information for me. Please feel free to reach out to her should you have any inquiries. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Murray. That was incredibly valuable information. I think particularly in terms of cultural expectations around doing business and supporting your importers, I think very important to note, just to help the importers and help you succeed in the Japan market. I would like now to hand over to Rose McDonald, who's the country manager with Wine Australia based in Tokyo, for her thoughts from a marketing perspective as well. Over to you, Rose.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I'm Rose. I'm the country manager for Wine Australia in Japan. Just before I do kick off, I might just add an answer to Rachel Meisner asking about the JAS Japan Organic Certifications. Murray did a marvelous job of simplifying it. It is quite complex, but at the moment we're in the process of receiving documents from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries in Japan, and then we'll be adding that information into our export guide. So that should probably take about one to 2 months, and we'll have detailed and clear information for your understanding. So I'm going to go quite quickly for the next 10 minutes or so, and I'll share our ambition, some additional market insights, and also activities that Wine Australia has in the Japan market. And 1 second. Here we go. So our ambition is to increase the demand and premium paid for Australian wines in Japan. In order to achieve this ambition, we have 3 key areas where we're activating. So the first is to elevate the image of Australian wine, and we do this through digital, also PR and media tie-ups, and also working with KOL sommeliers. In Japan, Australia still has a very strong supermarket image, and we are elevating our image to communicate more about the diversity and the premium and high quality wines that are coming out of Australia. And we work with sommeliers quite often to do that, to be able to drive advocacy through influencers in the wine world. And the second is to drive consideration through activation and trial. So we do that through masterclasses, tasting and webinars. And thirdly is also to increase the sales of Australian wine. So we do that through promotions and collaborations. Throughout all of our activities, we integrate education to promote the understanding of Australian wine. And we collaborate and have partnerships with other local partners as much as possible. So Austrade and we have each other on speed dial. We work a lot with Australian meat and livestock, and we also work a lot with Tourism Australia, so that we can increase the impact of our activities and also use our resources more efficiently. And less is more, so we really want to put a lot of effort into creating an impactful activity, and then we focus on high quality and innovative execution as well. Our target is 35 to 54-year-old Japanese men and women, or men and women in Japan. Actually, the majority of people who drink wine are older, but that demographic tends to be quite traditional and to stick to what they like. They're more preferential to look. For the 35 to 54 age bracket, they have higher disposable income. They're also open to new world wines. They're curious. They've often been overseas to Australia as well. So that is our target at the moment. Okay, going on to the next slide. So there is a lot of data on this slide. It's complementary to the statistics that Murray was showing before. There's 2 main sources for this data. The first is Wine Intelligence, and the second is from our export dashboard for the year ending September 2023. So first of all, if you look at over on your right-hand side, you can see that Japan is the number 8 market for the exports of Australian wine. Actually, that's jumped up. We were in position 9 a year ago. So our level is gradually increasing. We know that consumers of Australian wine have increased 4% since 2019 and now are at about 5 million people. And one other thing that I would really like to highlight on this slide is Australia is one of the few countries that is increasing in awareness and consumption, and we have ranked third in quality perception for the second year in a row. So it's quite small, but number one is France, number two is Italy, and number three is Australia. This is a very good thing for us. As I mentioned, we do have a very strong supermarket image. And I worked as a wine ambassador for about 2 or 3 years here, quite some time ago, but often I would be talking to trade and their image of Australian wine was Yosakte no Miyasui. So it's cheap and it's easy to drink. It was very much associated with the sunshine in the bottle image. Recently, I've heard a lot of sort of differing opinions coming through. People are referring to Australian wine as being free, and that used to be a sort of negative connotation, but nowadays it's seen as associated with quality. We're free to be able to create wine regardless of what region or regardless of what grape variety in a way that is very high quality and also in a very natural environment. So our image is slowly increasing, and we're doing everything that we can to help propel that image. And the other thing I wanted to mention on this slide as well, and one thing that's unique about Japan in the Asian market, is the number one exported wine is Chardonnay, and it's quite a big market for white wine and also orange wine. So that's quite interesting here. And the other opportunity that I see coming up is a big thirst for cool climate wine. So French wine and Italian wine is very prominent, but the price is going up and sometimes the quality is not going up that much either. So people are looking for high quality cool climate wines, in particular Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So there's a very nice opportunity for Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, also sparkling wines from cool climate regions. The other trend that I'm seeing a lot of, and what Murray alluded to before as well, is the natural wine. So natural wine has been a trend here for at least 7 years. There's a lot of wine bars here that will only deal with natural wine. I think one of the advantages that it has is it's quite easy for consumers to understand. They don't need to study anything about region or grape. There's no, it's quite accessible to order. So you do see a lot of people promoting natural wine. So that's another sort of trend to be aware of. The market is very, very crowded. And one thing that I also would like to just sort of mention here on this slide is that there's been an uplift of Japanese wine in the Japanese market. So everyone is saying there's a Japanese wine boom, and you can see not only Koshu, which is the indigenous grape to Japan, but a lot of Muscat Bellier, a lot of Colombard, a lot of Niagara. People are very proud of Japanese wine, and the industry is growing as well. So there's a lot of investment from France in, say, places like Hokkaido. Known sommeliers are also starting their own wineries. So that's also a movement to be aware of. So going on, so I wanted to share, just for time, I'll be very brief, but our 2023 results. So in terms of elevating the image of Australian wine in Japan, we have localized our global wine brand, Australian wine brand. We've also established our own local website. We've got our own social media, and we also have our own EDM. We have 500 trade contacts on our base, and we now have 160 consumers on our main contacts. We also tied up with Vogue Japan and Australian Wine. So that was a really interesting and quite a deliberate tie-up with the lifestyle media. Often wine here is seen as very intimidating, or it's hard to understand, or you need to be quite academic about it. So what we wanted to do was to make Australian wine more approachable, but also present it in a very premium way. And we tied up with Wine Kingdom. This is actually led by Austrade. Recently, as you all know, in the Decanter 2023 Awards, Australia took out a huge number of prizes, and we tied up to talk about the number of international awards that Australia wine was getting. So Murray mentioned before that if Australian wines have prizes or have awards, then it's very easy to sell that wine. So we wanted to focus on showing the high level awards that we were receiving and why that makes Australian wine more appealing. That was also followed up with a One's feature article in September, again talking about the opportunity for Australian wine in Japan. For activation and trial, we had trade webinars back in February, March with some influential sommeliers and educators. We also participated in April in the Japan Wine and Spirits Importers Association Climate Panel discussion, which was a fantastic opportunity to talk about all of the research and investment that goes on in Australian wine with anything to do with sustainability. This was also joined by representatives from Champagne, representatives from California, and very well-known wine writers. So it was a great sort of exposure for Australian wine. Austrade led the Australian wine tasting in Osaka, which Wine Australia supported with seminars, and which we'll do again this year. And then we had our main Australian wine tasting Tokyo, along with masterclasses with MW Richard Hemming and a wine dinner in September. For sales, we did a tie-up with a well-known restaurant chain called Odeno, which resulted, this was also Austrade-led. It was also supported by Wine Australia and Meat and Livestock Australia, and it resulted in the sales of 5,000 bottles of wine. Coming up to 2024 for our planned activity, and I'll just pull out a few bits of information from this slide. So if you look at the top two image, we recently did a tie-up with Wine Art magazine, which is a very well-known wine publication here. And we conducted a Discover Australian Wine campaign with 53 restaurants. This was a really great activity to highlight Australian wine in a way that could also be shared with consumers. And we also built our base of sort of advocate restaurants for Australian wine in Japan. So it's been a really valuable exercise in that respect. For two of the restaurants who have the best performance, we will be bringing them to Australia as a reward. It was an incentive for the trip. I'm in the process of receiving the reports now, and we have restaurants that sold over 400 bottles of wine during that campaign. So it's been a great exercise as well to kind of boost the volume while increasing the exposure of Australian wine in Japan. Coming up, so just before Vinexpo, we'll have some Nagoya seminars and a dinner. And then Austrade will have their tasting again in Osaka, and we'll be supporting with seminars and a dinner. For the seminars, they're pretty much all sold out. There's a big thirst for knowledge. We also worked with the Japan Sommelier Association to get that invitation out to as many sommeliers as possible. So we sent out to about 4,000 sommeliers in those Nagoya and Osaka areas. So that's been a really great response. We're also planning the Tokyo tasting again for September. We are on the cusp of deciding the venue and fixing the date. So EOIs are open at the moment, and we should be able to open up the official registration midway in April. I'll just skip past this for time. This was a Wine Art tie-up that we did. I just want to make mention of the food pairings, which was a really great sort of insight for us in the market. We tied up with 4 well-known sommeliers, and we asked them to introduce one red wine and one white wine from the Australian Wine Tasting Tokyo last year, and we asked them to present with their recommended food pairing. And one thing that I'll just kind of pull out from here is the use of seasonal ingredients. So seasonality is very important in Japan. We're coming into spring, so you can see a lot of asparagus, a lot of tomato, a lot of those sort of seasonal ingredients. And a lot of the presentation was sort of European styles using Japanese ingredients. And so that's there for you on the page. Some wonderful presentation, but it was a great way for us to introduce Australian wine recommended by sommeliers in a very premium way. And I'll skip past this one. Now, I just wanted to kind of share a few points and reiterate a few points that Mari mentioned. We're very short on time, so I'm going to go quickly here. But for building success in Japan, trust and long-term relationships are very important, and visiting the market when possible is quite key, I believe. When you visit the market, you'll not only kind of see what the layout looks like, the lay of the land, you'll see what the competition is, but you also kind of give the motivation to the importer as well to activate with your brand while you're there, particularly if you're bringing a winemaker to market. And so that will help get your importer to kind of focus on your brand. And say, for example, when you're visiting, they may do winemaker dinners or market visits or customer visits. Detail, everything that Murray said. Whenever you're providing tasting sheets as well, I notice in English it's quite like evocative language. Our trader often, after very detailed winemaking information, very detailed information about the terroir or what the vineyards are like. Sometimes people won't understand everything on the page, but the more detail, the more that you build the trust and the authenticity in the wine. One that is very important as well, so for all activities that you participate in Japan, please ensure that you communicate with your importer and confirm their support before participating. This one's really important. One thing that we've noticed is sometimes when we have people participating, the stock or the wine that they nominate is on allocation, or it may not be clear who is supporting the wine. So it's important to have those details set with your importer beforehand, and then your importer will feel much more comfortable in joining in those activities. Two other points. It's great to share what you're succeeding in Japan and in Australia and other key markets. So best practice examples. For example, if you have a wine that's listed in a restaurant in Hong Kong, or you have a wine that's listed in a restaurant in Paris, it's really great to share that with your importers. And then again, it helps to build the authenticity and the appeal of your wine for a Japanese audience. And one thing I did want to mention as well is it's very difficult for people to understand what we eat in Australia and how we pair wine with food in Australia. So it's always good to share best practices, examples of how you pair your wine with food in Australia or in other markets. That is it from me. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime, and I'll pass back to Sarah. Thanks.
Thanks, Rose. We've got a little bit of time for questions. A lot of information to take in today, a lot of things to think about for both markets. One question which I'm going to put out to both or to anyone online from both Japan and Korea is there a best time of year for producers or exporters to visit the market in support of their importers? Rose, did you want to take that one first for Japan?
Sure. So probably around the September tasting is a good time. We had 27 importers supporting the tasting last year. It'll probably be something similar this year. It's around the time it's good to visit customers as well. So what I see a lot of importers do is they'll ask the winery to come to market. They'll do a whole set of customer visits. They may do some other activations, and then they've got the tasting. So that's quite a nice time of year to come. Do you have anything to add to that, Murray?
No, I just popped up to echo what you've said, Rose. I think that's really great. If you can combine a major event or major promotional event to get the lay of the land and then get some opportunities to meet and promote your brand is good. The other thing, of course, is I'm just looking at greater retail or new listings. A lot of importers are looking to change or update their catalogs in the spring or the autumn if they're looking at things. So, you know, a little bit before that time, September's ideal, or sort of March is also good if you're looking to get new clients, I guess.
Thanks, Murray and Rose. Dane or Susie, did you have any thoughts on Korea?
Just for Korea, obviously we have a wine event scheduled for this May. Soul Food and Hotels in June, but I think it depends on your corporate strategy as well and the corporate strategy of your partners. So, Susie, did you have thoughts about when is good? When to avoid? the hardest.
So we have Lunar New Year and Korean Thanksgiving holiday season. But ahead of this kind of holiday, importers are really busy to sell the gift set. So please avoid the prior a month to the Lunar New Year and Korean Thanksgiving holidays. Super busy. And in October, there are so many wine events will be held. So it's not a good time to be highlighted.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I think we might leave it there in terms of questions because we are over time. So we'll wrap up now. But a couple of takeaways I think important for both markets is just the importance of visiting the market. A lot's obviously changed over the past few years. So, you know, there's no better way to really understand the reality of doing business there, but also wine consumption and the way consumption's changed than visiting the market. So highly recommend doing that. Support your importers. Would recommend staying in close contact with your importers, asking them what they need from you to help support them sell your wines in the market. Refer to the export market guides. There was a lot of information, particularly from Japan, around regulatory changes. So export market guides for both Japan and South Korea are on our website. Please use those as a first reference. They should have answers to everything you need, but if not, you can contact us and we will be happy to help. And there was a couple of activities mentioned in both markets there open for expressions of interest and registration. They are available on our website, so www.wineaustralia.com if you wanted to register to participate in either of those activities. We'll finish it there. Otherwise, if there are any other questions, please email us at asia@wineaustralia.com and we will answer them directly. But hopefully we've been able to give you some updates today that will help you make strategic decisions around doing business in Japan and Korea. As I mentioned at the start, this session has been recorded, so we will send a link out to all attendees afterwards. Thank you again for joining the Japan and South Korea market update. Thank you to my colleagues at Austrade and to Rose and Susie for all of their insights and valuable information. And we hope to see you all again next time for the next update. Thanks very much, everyone.